You're listening to The Seed, brought to you by Staley Credit Union and the Brecknitz Group of Raymond James. Welcome to The Seed. I'm Julie Staley over at Spencer Films, and I have Laura Jahr over at the Staley Museum. How are you today, Laura?
Hi, Julie. It's a rainy day here today.
Well, it goes along with the season, but it goes along kind of with the topic that we're going to be talking about. Actually, probably for the next two episodes, we want to talk about some of the recipes for success with the Staley Company and their retail line, and the message that they were getting out, their marketing message getting out to women, which were a key target for their customer base. We do want to thank our sponsors, Staley Credit Union and Brecknitz Group of Raymond James, for being with us, and recognize our partners, Herald and Review, First Mid Insurance Group, and McGuire, Uhas, Huffman, and Buckley. A lot of support for this podcast and for our project in producing this documentary about the life of A.E. Staley called Fields of Gold. We continue to be in post-production, but we are moving very, very quickly to the end of that, and we should have some news soon on when we're going to be able to release and have this available to the public. So we are very excited about that, and we will announce that on a future podcast. Meanwhile, we have a lot of history that is, some of it is in the documentary, and some of it is over at the museum, and a lot of it is in the Staley journals if you go online. So through our website, you can access the library of journals. Laura, there's quite a bit of information in those, and we have more than just the journals. There are newsletters in that library, correct?
Yeah, the library expanded this year by about 2,000 pages of information. So yeah, we have the original, the Staley Journal, which was kind of the original internal publication for the company, which was started and kind of maintained with the Staley Fellowship Club. And then about the 1930s and moving forward, there's a period of time where this new Staley newspaper comes into play. It's a little bit more business oriented than the Staley Journal, which is a little bit more home, family, that kind of thing, more geared towards employees, I guess, where the Staley News is kind of more business oriented. And they run parallel for a while. And then eventually, we don't know or at least I don't know. Here at the museum, we don't know the exact date of when was the last Staley Journal. We keep thinking that we've hit the end, and then another one will show up that proves us wrong, that it went on a little bit longer. But my conjecture is that the Staley Journal went on through the 60s and probably closed its doors when Ruth Cade retired. She had been the editor since the early 1920s, and she was just amazing. She was a friend to Mr. Staley, a sounding board to Mr. Staley and the company. So when she retired probably in the 60s, I think that's probably when the journal closed its doors, and then they just moved forward with the Staley News.
Yeah, she was a fixture there for decades, obviously, and made a real place for women, and made a real place for all of these products that they were trying to get the information out about to homemakers of those years. And she was a close friend of Mr. Staley's. We have some personal letters of him sending to her, especially when he was retired in Florida, and he would mail letters back and forth to her. And they had a nice friendship through the years. So she definitely made a real mark and made a real impression on the company and just the history that surrounds all of that. But we're talking one of the things that was in the journals that I think is really interesting is to look at the recipes that were in there and to see, of course, how they made certain things, how it was different, and how they incorporated the Staley products, the retail products, into those. And we're going to try to have some of those on our next podcast. So that will be a lot of fun as we're getting ready for the holidays, and new fun recipes everybody wants to try for holiday meals. So it's really fun to go through and read those and try to see if you can replicate them. But a lot of the ingredients aren't the same. It's very, very different. So we should maybe modernize some of them and do a test, have a test kitchen for some of them. But Ruth was really instrumental in putting all that together.
She was. She entered as the editor of the Staley Journal around 1923. And she, throughout the 20s and just into the 30s, she had a household section, which she incorporated these recipes. And we should look at these recipes. I think if we want to encourage people to go to the journal and look them up. These are vintage recipes using vintage ingredients and not taking into account some of the issues that we talk so much about today: gluten, non-gluten, all of that kind of stuff. So I think people, if they decide to go to the journal and look at these recipes, they should see it as an adventure,
Definitely.
a journey into the past, and they might have to use their computer to Google what some of the ingredients are or what possible substitutes, exist today, and that kind of thing. But it's definitely an adventure. And for somebody that loves cooking, I highly recommend that they go to the journal, and there's a decade or more of continuous recipes. Then after the 30, as you move into the 30s, it gets a little hit and miss. Every once in a while there's a recipe, but there isn't a dedicated section per se, as there was during that decade of the 1920s and moving into the 30s. So, why do we have these recipes? Well, as I said, as you said, Julie, there was a symbiotic relationship between Mr. Staley and Ruth Cade. Ruth Cade had her ear to the ground. She was in touch with the employees and their families. She was the one that was putting into the journal all kinds of things regarding births and marriages and anniversaries and things like that. So I really think that she was an important sounding board for Mr. Staley. And in one of those conversations, I'm relatively certain came up, who's buying the Staley product, and the buyers of the Staley product really are women in the community, women in the nation. And they were his audience for that particular for that part of his product line that wasn't the industrial side of the product line, but for that retail line. And it's a fascinating era. If you look through the Staley Journal, you have the recipes, but also another thing that's a lot of fun to look at are the displays that salesmen would set up in the grocery stores of Staley products.
They were pretty elaborate too.
Very much.
You're going back, 100 years or even more in some of them to see how they had all of these products displayed at these, conventions and sales meetings. And it was extremely creative and innovative, really, when you compare it to things that you see today. Even the only thing they lack is the digital technology.
Well, and they were meant to attract interest, attract attention. But the recipes and in the Staley Journal, not only do they have the recipes, but they have all kinds of little bits of wisdom about household wisdom, whether it's how to do something in the kitchen, or a special tool that works well, or how to do something in the household. There's information about how the best way to remove stains, for example, from clothing, or I don't know. There's a lot of little bits and pieces of wisdom that go along with the recipes. But definitely, and if you want to if viewers, people listening to this podcast, want to look for holiday recipes, they should definitely look in the November and December issues, which are the Thanksgiving and Christmas issues, because those are the ones where you'll see recipes that are geared towards, it was also about teaching people about nutrition, because this whole, and what we see in the journal, for example, in 1928, Ruth Cade brings in another gal. Her name was Dorothy Heald. and she will take over the household section and be producing that section. She won't be there for very long, or at least as far as we can tell in terms of the duration of the household section. But she wants to build a relationship with people that are buying the journal or reading the journal. And she wants housewives to send in their questions, kind of like a Dear Abby, dear Dorothy, how do you get a stain out of a linen tablecloth, or, that kind of thing. And then she would answer, not directly, she wouldn't print the letters like Dear Abby did, but she would pick out some of the interesting ones and answer some of those questions in the journal. So there was kind of a dialogue going on between readers and editors. So, and this is an era where you start to see the whole concept of home economics developing. And then by the 40s, home economics will be something that women will lean towards for some of their first experiences in colleges and things. They'll get their degree in home economics. And so this is kind of through this whole process of Staley directing his products to women, we kind of start to see a whole new field of interest opening up for women, albeit it's still a homemaking field of interest, but baby steps get you where you want to be, right? So
absolutely. And even if you look back, go all the way back to the beginning when A.E. Staley decided he was going to be a manufacturer, and even when he was a salesman and started packaging starch, he knew how to market to women. That was his I guess his DMI, so to speak. That was his area that he was looking at, and his direct audience, so to say. And he marketed his product with packaging that would appeal to women, and had grocers put the packaging out in certain ways, stock them in certain ways that they would appeal to women, because he spent so much time visiting grocery stores and general stores, and he knew what women were looking for, and he knew what would sell and what wasn't selling, and he had that sixth sense, and he knew all along.
Well, and in this case, as we've seen in other situations with Mr. Staley, whether it was, starting the soybean processing, Mr. Staley understood something that I think led to many of his successes. He understood the importance of educating people about what he was trying to provide them. Whether it was encouraging the farmers to plant soybeans and educating them about the soybeans and the soybean special train and all of that kind of thing, or now moving towards women and saying, okay, well, how can we generate interest in the homemakers of this country, in our products? What can we show them about our products, how they can be used, and that kind of thing. And so, it's definitely one of his tools in his arsenal was the question of educating people. And he does it over and over again throughout his career, shows people the way. Really.
Yeah, absolutely. And it all had paid off for him. And by the time he retired, it was really a matter of just managing all of these products that he had made successful. And the Staley Journal was a very beloved part of that company for those employees. I love looking through it and seeing, these stories about families and what they're doing. Sometimes they would have pictures from their children's birthday parties, or a trip that a family took, or pictures of houses that Staley families lived in. And it was a way to show the life that these Staley employees were living, and to show that they were all living, well. They had good lives because of the company. And so, yeah, the recipes really add to it. And it is fun to look at those holiday issues and see what they were eating back then, and what was the popular item, what was the talked about product back then. Some of it, very, very different than what we eat today. But it's just really an interesting trip back in time.
But yeah, it's exactly, it's an adventure. One of the things, I think one of the reasons the household section appeals to so many of us when we scroll through the journals is because it's such an indicator of the times. And I think that that whole first era of the Staley Manufacturing Company during the life of A.E. Staley Sr. is really an era that we could call all in the family. You know, everything is all in the family. I think I have provided the podcast, and maybe they can show it later, with an ad I think it was a cake baking ad. And it shows a little girl, and this little girl is the daughter of somebody in the company, from, I think, somebody from the mill house. I think it says on the caption underneath. Later on, you know, the Stay Flow products and other things, well, the models that they will use in a lot of their advertising will be people from the company. And, you know, when you think about that, if you're just an average person, a secretary on, you know, in the group, or your daughter or your child is being featured, I mean, how exciting is that when you're, oh, the journal's coming out, and my daughter's going to be, you know, the cake, baking a cake, you know, for the ad, or somebody, you know, somebody from the family or somebody from the employee family is involved in the advertising. So it's all part and parcel of the same thing, whether it's the people doing the cooking, writing the recipes, celebrating their family event. It's all in the family. It really is.
Absolutely. A family company, family was the center of everything that goes for Mr. Staley's personal life and for his professional life. And another thing that he brought to employees to help build their families was the Staley Credit Union. And that's something that has a really deep history with the Staley company. Even though they're separate entities, they became separate entities, but there still is a really great shared history. And the Staley Credit Union asks, if, you know, what if you own your own bank? If you join the Staley Credit Union, you will, because when you're a credit union member, profits come back to you, not the investors. And how does that happen? Well, if you think lower interest rates on loans, higher dividends on savings, financial education, and unmatched member service, you have all of these available to you through the Staley Credit Union. So if you become a member today, you can just visit StaleyCreditUnion.com. That's StaleyCU.com. And this institution is not federally insured by Member Choice, but it's proudly insured by American Share Insurance. Again, they were in the lobby of the administrative building for quite a while before things changed, and then now they have several branches all over, so you see them a lot of places. And yes, definitely a shared history there. Again, bringing family to the center of everything that Mr. Staley was doing. I mean, you know, his products were based on the home, based on the family, whether it were, you know, food products in the beginning, and then eventually, you know, you had cleaning and all kinds of other supplies down the road. It was all based on the home and making it a better place. And he definitely tried to do his part. So. We have so much history in the Staley journals that people can look up going on to our website at thestaleymuseum.com. Laura, do we have any available at the museum to look at by hand, or are they all online that we have available?
Of the journals?
Yeah, if someone comes in.
We have quite a few journals. We haven't actually put them out for people to look through, but that is something that we could do, or we could possibly create some copies of them that we don't have to worry about. We have quite a few journals of different eras, but no, we don't really have them out for people to look at, which doesn't mean that that's not something that we could do or that we could provide. Or if someone came in specifically interested and asked us, would I be able to, you know, see a certain issue of the journal, by all means, we would make that available to them for their perusal. So.
And of course, we do have some copies that are missing. So if someone finds a copy, we would love to see if it's part of our library or not, because there are some that we cannot find. And hopefully it'll turn up in someone's trunk or basement or attic or something down the road. You never know what treasures are awaiting in people's homes.
New things come in all the time. And the surprising thing about that is that sometimes new things come in and they cause us to have to completely rethink something
Yes.
that we thought before. But I guess that's the way history is, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You
It is. It's always changing. There are always new things. We definitely, of course, have talked about how we found out that through researching this documentary, there were definitely things that changed the way we were looking at everything. So, it's you just can't research it enough and tell the story. So we're so glad to have those Staley journals and have almost a complete library of them going back
one
to 1917. I think is that what?
Yeah, 1917 is when they got started, and it's kind of hit and miss because for a while it was, it wasn't always every month. It was every 2 months. Sometimes they skipped a month, and we only know that because if you catch a little phrase at the end of one journal, they might say there won't be an issue next month due to blah blah blah. But for the most part, we have almost all of the journals online for people to see. Just because we're talking about recipes, let me put out there also that one of the plans the museum staff has for the upcoming year is an exhibit about the test kitchens and the kinds of recipes they were developing the test kitchens. Now that is really, the test kitchens came a little bit later than what we've been talking about here today. We've been talking about Mr. Staley's lifetime. The test kitchens really came right after, on the heels of the end of World War II. And so we want to look at those test kitchens, what they were doing, how they helped the product line, who they were addressed to, what kinds of recipes were they bringing out, and that kind of thing. So as we move into 2023, we hope to put some more emphasis on the whole question of Staley recipes and test kitchens before and after World War II. So
Yeah, so important in that history. Another important piece of history, we have so many businesses that support our local history, and we have that at the Brecknitz Group of Raymond James. And there you'll find a team of professionals with more than 250 years of combined experience. They offer steadfast guidance for families, individuals, businesses, and institutional investors. And their powerhouse of experience is supported by the award-winning resources of Raymond James. That's one of the largest independent financial service firms in the country. So for more information on them, you can visit thebrecknitzgroup.com. It's up there on the screen if you're watching. If you're listening, it's the Brecknitz, which is BRECHNITZ group.com. Brecknitz Group of Raymond James. It's a financial future backed by strength and stability, which is exactly what the Staley Company has really always had at its core, and so much history to celebrate and share with everyone through these journals and at the museum. So this is exciting, with this new exhibit that will be coming down the road. We'll probably talk about it on a future podcast and give people more information. Of course, you can follow us on social media, our Facebook page for the Staley Museum or for Spencer Films, and we will have more information on them there. Do you guys have an idea when you might finish that or get started for that?
We haven't started it yet.
Okay.
It's only in the planning process at this point. It'll be sometime next year, probably moving towards the late spring, early summer, something like that. If it gets up, obviously, if we get it up sooner than that, we'll make sure that people are on Facebook and on the website. And that's another thing. If people want to stay in touch with the things that are happening here at the museum in terms of new exhibits or events coming up, they can subscribe to our newsletter through the StaleyMuseum.com website. And we send out a quarterly newsletter. That's all. And an occasional information blast when there's an event or something. So if you're interested in staying apprised of what's going on here at the museum, by all means, get on our website and plug in your email address, and then you'll be up to date on whatever's happening that way when a new exhibit goes into place or an event is coming up.
That's fantastic. We continue the tradition of Staley newsletters. So 100 years later, over 100 years later, we're still continuing that. So I think that would give the thumbs up approval from everyone that was involved before. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Laura, for joining us again, for you and the staff, all your work there. And we will, definitely keep in touch on all of this and have updates coming up soon on our podcast. So join us next for our podcast on November the 15th. As we said, we will have some recipes from these Staley cookbooks and from the Staley journals. You really don't want to miss it if you're looking for new things, new ideas for the holidays. I'm Julie Staley. Thank you for joining us. Have a great day.